said, well, why don't you just wear your robe? So I've put on my robe. So here we are this beautiful morning for another reading from The Essence of Success by Earl Nightingale. Today's passage, what happens when you run out of goals? Here are some interesting questions for you. You might want to try answering them. 1. If you could completely change places with any other person in the world, would you do it? And who would that person be? 2. If you could work at any job you could choose, would that work be different from the work you're now doing? 3. If you could live in any part of the country you want to live, would you move from where you're now living? 4. If you could go back to age 12 and live your life from that point over again, would you do it? Studies indicate that the great majority of people, even though they have a certain amount of dissatisfaction with their present lives and don't seem to be as happy as they might be, will answer no to all 4 questions. What brought this to mind is an attorney friend of mine who confided now that he's accomplished everything he's worked and struggled for so long to achieve. He finds himself depressed more and more of the time. He has a fine practice and excellent income, a beautiful home, a wife and children to whom he's devoted. In fact, everything is finally just as he'd planned it for so many years. And for no reason that he can put his finger on, all the fun and enthusiasm has strangely disappeared. He's listless and unhappy, and he can't think of a single reason why. This has become a common modern malady, and it's what so often happens when a person runs out of goals. This is when the game of life begins to go to pot, and the person needs to remind himself of the basic rules for successful, enthusiastic living. And the first rule is that a human being must have something worthwhile towards which he is working. Without that, everything else, even the most remarkable achievements of the past and all the trappings of worldly success, tend to turn sour. Achieving our life goals can be compared to opening our presents on Christmas morning and watching those we love open theirs. We look forward to the day and plan and work toward it. Suddenly it's there. All the presents have been opened, and then what? Well, we must then turn our thoughts and attention to other things. The successful novelist begins planning his next book before he completes the one he's working on. The scientist always has something new challenging to turn to when he completes a project. The teacher has a new class coming up. The young family has children to raise and get through school, the new home to buy, the promotion to work for. But for millions who reach their 40s and 50s and find they've done all they set out to do and that there are no new challenges to give them stimulus and direction, there often comes the most trying time of their lives. The search for meaning, for new meaning, and it must be found if the old interest and vitality are to be restored to their lives, if they're to achieve renewal as persons. If they understand this, even the search for new meaning can bring new interest into their lives. They've got to say to themselves, all right, I've done what I've set out to do. Now I must find something new and interesting to do. Getting back to our questions, the thought of going back to age 12 fills most people with the dread bordering on horror. They wouldn't do it for anything, and the upshot of the whole thing is that most people are living lives they themselves have fashioned and have, or are getting, what they really want, or at least what they're willing to settle for. And when this is brought to their attention, they often begin to get a lot more enjoyment from the life they've got. They begin to enjoy themselves more and realize that things aren't so bad after all. Do you appreciate the life you have fashioned for yourself? When was the last time you assessed your long-term goals? Are you prepared to create new goals after you have accomplished your current goals? Again, another great one. It's interesting when you think about how, every day of our lives we're moving towards goals consistently. Maybe even if we don't set these goals, even just to get through the day is the goal that we look for. And, that's kind of like living your life from default. And here we're talking about living your life by design, creating your life, knowing how it works, putting the science to work. So, as he says here, it might be worthwhile asking you those questions. What were they here? Like, what would you do if you got to go back to the age 12 and do it all over again? If you could live in any part of the country, where would you want to live? If you could work at any job you would choose, would that work be what you're doing right now? If you could completely change places with any other person in the world, would you do it? And who would that person be? It's interesting when you think of those from the place where it goes, I'm kind of content and happy with where I am, but what would you do differently if you could? Right? So take some time to put, pen to paper again and, start working on those lists of goals that you want. And the other thing to remember is that, anything that isn't moving forward, anything that isn't growing is dying. It's a law of a universe. So, start working on creating, and move towards that next big goal in your life. Think about what the next challenge is and go after it. So another good passage here to remember a lot of things. I hope you all enjoy your day. I will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early. For those of you that have joined live, thanks for joining me, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Have an awesome day. This is Dr. Kush. Bye now.